Yes, so welcome everyone to our webinar. We're really lucky to have Professor Cath Ellis, Pro Vice Chancellor, Quality and Integrity, give the official welcome. Yeah, please start, Professor Cath, when you're ready.
Thank you so much, Olivia, and it really is an honour and a pleasure to be here today to welcome everybody to this webinar. On behalf of Marianne, who I know is very interested in this work as well, I'd like to issue a warm welcome to everybody who's participating in this webinar, and a big thank you also to all of our presenters. I'm going to begin our time together today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we all join if we're in the continent of Australia. I'm at the Parramatta South Campus today, and so I can confirm that I am enjoying seeing the Batamatagal blue sky out of my window, and very much enjoyed smelling the lemon-scented gums as I cycled past them on my ride along the Parramatta River this morning. And every time I smell them and see them, it reminds me of the thousands of years and thousands of generations of knowledge that would have smelled those smells and seen that river over tens of thousands of years. So I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I extend that respect to any Indigenous or people of First Nations who are joining us today in this webinar. And of course, my respects to any people of First Nations or Indigenous people who will benefit from the work that we do. So moving on from there, I'd like to add a few thoughts, if I may, just to the start of our proceedings today. As you may have seen from the program, from my bio, this is actually an area of research interest for me as well. As you can see from my job title, I'm Pro Vice Chancellor Quality and Integrity, and those two words are really central to what we need to be thinking about in terms of the challenge that generative AI has presented us as an industry. We have to put our hands up and say we've been one of the most disrupted industries when it comes to generative AI. But on top of that, the graduates that we produce are also going to be entering industries that themselves are being disrupted. So it's a huge part of what we have to think through. When ChatGPT launched in November 2022, and I do have to acknowledge that students had been using generative AI long before that, so I'm not pretending that suddenly the world changed at that point, but the awareness of it really changed at that point. Immediately after that, for about sort of 3 or 4 months, I was doing constant media interviews as a researcher in this area because everybody's minds turned first to us as an industry, thinking, gosh, if I'd had that technology available when I'd been at uni, I could have used it to ... kind of where everybody's thinking went. So we are a very, very heavily disrupted industry when it comes to this. This topic that we're covering today, I think, is so fundamentally important to what we do on top of that, because we are so proud of our #1 in the world status when it comes to sustainability and our 4-peat, as George keeps calling it, to maintain that status 4 years in a row really is an extraordinary achievement. And one of the reasons why is because we do zero in on the conversation of sustainability so frequently and authentically in everything that we do. I'd like to put a provocation out to everybody today, and perhaps it's something I could even invite our presenters to respond to if they want to. But one of the things I talk about a lot is I rail against the proposal that we should use generative AI in a way that is ethical and responsible. I'm going to argue that we need to walk away from talking in those terms because we can't use generative AI ethically and we can't use generative AI responsibly. I just want to unpack that in a little bit more detail to explain what I mean by that. Let's start with ethical. I don't think it's possible to use generative AI ethically. I think it's always already unethical. It's unethical in terms of the human labour exploitation that goes into making it, particularly in terms of reinforcement feedback through human learning. No, reinforcement learning through human feedback. I always get that wrong. I mean, that's something that's also shared by all of the social media we use, but the human exploitation, the way that it is ingested, decades and decades of human bias in terms of the way that it does its thinking. And I do use quite deliberately, I do use human terms when I talk about generative AI because I think it's really useful for us to think in these terms. There's all sorts of other reasons why the unethical nature of it, the way that it is ingested copyright information, intellectual property from people, from tens and tens of thousands of people, including myself, millions of people probably, without their consent, without their consultation, and without any kind of remuneration. They're just three quick examples of how just the very nature of the construction for them to be able to work, generative AI tools are unethical. One of the biggest unethical questions we have to ask is just the resource impact that they take, the energy they consume and the contribution they make to global warming and climate chaos. And that is one of the things that I'd like us to really focus in on today, that it's always already going to be unethical to use generative AI. I flip that around and say it's also always already unethical not to use generative AI. For instance, if we talk about a lot of friends of mine work in the legal profession and a lot of them are grappling with, well, how can we make really good use of generative AI to make sure that people who've previously not been able to afford litigation now might be able to afford it because we can reduce the costs of producing or providing access to justice for people who don't have deep enough pockets to litigate. So it could be that to be an ethical lawyer, you always already have to be able to use generative AI to reduce the costs of access to justice for your clients who previously haven't had access to it. So this is the paradox, that it's unethical to use generative AI and it's unethical not to use it. So I want to move over to the other side for a moment to think about responsible. So we talk about ethical and responsible. I don't think it's possible to know if we're using generative AI responsibly because we don't know how it's built and we don't know how it works. When OpenAI suddenly stopped becoming quite so open, particularly when they reportedly, and we don't know, they reportedly received $10 billion of investment from Microsoft to develop ChatGPT-4. We don't know because they didn't tell us, even though the name is OpenAI. That was a really important watershed moment when we stopped being able to see a whole pile of things that are going on in terms of how these tools are built. The people who build these tools don't even know how they work. So it's not possible for us to use generative AI ethically. It's not possible for us not to use it ethically, and it's not possible for us to know if we're using it responsibly. So what do we do? I would suggest that in fact we should replace those terms with the words appropriate and effective. So I think we should aim to use generative AI appropriately to the best of our knowledge, underline, italics, bold, to the best of our knowledge, for the right reasons, given the context and the current social construction of what responsible reasonably can be understood to be. Now, that's a lot of words, but that's just how we're having to couch things. The other side, effective. I think we should be looking to use generative AI effectively. And that's really where we have to ask ourselves the question, does our use of it enhance our productivity and or our performance? In other words, are we able to get the same quality of work done more quickly than we could have done without it? Can we use the same amount of time and actually produce a much, much better quality result? Or better still, can we produce work of higher quality in less time and give more work-life balance or life-work balance back to ourselves and actually improve the quality of everybody's lives? So when we hear on the morning radio, people wringing their hands about productivity, and we stop and think, well, what does that mean for me in my industry? What do I produce? This is, I think, one of the pressing questions. And we have to we have to expect that graduate employers are reasonably going to expect that our graduates we produce are going to give them a productivity and or performance uptick by being appropriately equipped with the skills and the capabilities and the knowledge and the ability to use generative AI appropriately and effectively. So let's step away from talking about it being used ethically and responsibly because it can't be and we don't know. And let's start instead talking about using it appropriately and effectively. So I put that challenge out to everybody, Olivia, and I hand back to you. And we look forward very much to the rest of the proceedings for today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Cath. And yeah, I hope we can keep up this discussion throughout the webinar this morning. So yes, my job today is to introduce all our amazing speakers and also make sure we keep to time as well. So as you can see, this is our schedule for today. So we kind of have these two key themes of generative AI, learning and sustainability. Then we'll have a little bit of a break. And then we'll talk about generative AI solutions to climate change. And it's so exciting with our speakers today. We have educators, students and industry representatives joining us from obviously Western Sydney University, but also from France and America as well. So really excited for our diverse group of speakers today. And thank you so much for joining. And also just in terms of our format, as you can see, every speaker has around 15 minutes. So there will be a mix of a presentation and then some discussion as well. But I also hope we can have a longer discussion at the end as well. So yeah, please just keep up the conversation, whether that's via audio or our Zoom chat, or we also have a Padlet as well, so we can keep the conversations going after this webinar as well. Yes, so it's now my pleasure to announce our first guest speaker, Dr. Toktam Bashirzadeh Tabrizi. Dr. Toktam is an associate lecturer in the School of Engineering, Design and Built Environment at Western Sydney University, and she specializes in sustainable design and life cycle thinking. And she also has over 15 years experience in architecture and sustainable design, bringing both industry knowledge and academic expertise. So thank you very much, Dr. Toktam, and please just feel free to share your screen and begin when you wish.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Can you see me my screen clearly?
Yes, we can see it. It's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending this webinar. We are excited about hearing this like a very emerging problem and also solution, I should say. I am Toktam Bashirzadeh, and today I'm talking about the double-edged sword of AI. But before we begin, I would like also to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Euro Nation, the traditional custodian of the land from which I am joining today, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I am also recognize their deep and continuing connection to land, water, and knowledge. We are gathered here today because we believe in both progress and responsibility. And AI is transferring our world, but also leaving behind a heavy environmental footprint. In this talk, I will share not just the sobering fact about generative AI's carbon, water, and material costs, but also an example of how we can turn AI into an unlikely hero for the planet. So let's begin with uncomfortable truth and ask this question. What is hidden cost of asking AI a question? Training a model like GPT-3 consumed around 1,300 megawatt hours of electricity. That's like powering 120 American homes for a year. It also emitted over 500 tons of CO2, equivalent to 300 return flights across the US. And it doesn't stop there. Every time we use AI, even just a simple question, it uses 5 to 10 times more electricity than a Google search. At a scale that could mean much power as a mid-sized European country. It looks very scary. Um, and it doesn't end with carbon. To cool the servers running these models, we use enormous amount of water. When GPT-3 was trained in US, it likely evaporated over 700,000 liters of clean water. That's enough to build 320 Teslas or supply water for hundreds of people for months. And then there is the e-waste. The hardware that powers AI chips and processors is resource intensive to manufacture and has a short life span. If current trends continue, AI could generate over 16 million tons of e-waste by 2030. And that's a mountains of discarded devices taller than Mount Everest. We are creating something powerful, but also deeply extractive. And that's the scary part of the AI. But we have some good news as well. Sustainability in AI is possible. It is hard, but it is not very hopeless. Researchers are optimizing algorithms to use less energy. Some labs now train models using off-peak or renewable energy. There are calls for AI nutrition labels so we can see the carbon cost of models we use. And new ISO standards are on the way to regulate AI's environmental footprints. But I believe the better news is AI is not just part of the problem, it can be part of the solution. So let's dive into the case study from design education where AI is helping teach the architects of the future. This brings me to the heart of my today's talk, and I will take you into the world of design education and show how we are using AI to teach young designers to think in circular ways, assess life cycle impacts, and design a future we can actually live in. How we are using AI to help students design more sustainable buildings and products and better future. Buildings and construction at the moment are responsible for 39% of global CO2 emissions, and the way we build matters a lot. So, but in most architecture and design programs, students don't get the tools to assess this impact and even understand this concept and think in the way we need to think in terms of the design. Concepts like circular design and life cycle assessment are rarely taught in depth in universities or any education system. But that's the reason behind that, because these topics are very complicated and it's not easy to deal with that. For example, full LCAs requires huge data sets, engineering knowledge, local context, and hours of time that students just simply don't have. And that's where AI can come in. So how does AI help in this matter? We have identified four core capabilities that make AI a valuable teaching partner. First, automated data collection. Students no longer need to dig through outdated PDFs. The AI provides accurate, up-to-date data instantly. Second, predictive modeling. The AI gives students real-time feedback. For example, should they increase insulation, reduce glazing? The system helps them make smarter design decision early, which is really important to make impact. And thirdly, optimization suggestions. The AI acts like a sustainability coach, spotting inefficiencies and suggesting better assemblies or layouts without limiting creativity. And finally, impact visualization. Seeing a hotspot of carbon emissions in your design makes sustainability tangible. And this tool turns environmental assessment from a burden into an exciting part of the design. We developed a prototype that blends two powerful technologies, a knowledge-based system filled with expert sustainability data and a large language model for natural language conversation. Imagine a design student in Sydney asking what materials can reduce carbon footprint in this climate, and the AI might say, try engineering timber, insulate to R5 or higher, use recycled steel, and avoid too much west-facing glass. This advice is custom, friendly, and also visual. Instead of spreadsheets, a student get immediate iterative feedback. This isn't just a tool, it is a tutor, a coach whispering in their ears, and it works. Of course, there is more to how the tool works, but we don't have time to get to the details today, and that's not either the main point of this talk. So let's return. What is matter for the design students take away from this is to impact on the real world scenarios. This tool makes sustainability accessible and immediate, and it helps students learn what that waste is not inevitable. It is a design flaw. A building is not static. It is part of a regenerative cycle. Every material choice has a climate impact and also a better alternative. So let's return to the question I began with. Is sustainable AI possible? I think yes, but only if we choose to make it so. That means making AI leaner, greener, and more transparent, but it also means putting AI to work solving the very problems it has helped to create by educating a new generation. Imagine a future where every design graduate understand lifecycle assessment and circular design, understand the impact of their design on the environment at the early design stage, and where every project starts with the question, how can this building or product heal and not harm? That's what AI can help us do, not to replace human creativity, but to amplify our responsibility. So let's use our smartest tools to build the most sustainable world we can. Thank you for listening, and I would love to hear your thoughts and also answering any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Toktam. I see there's already some comments in the chat. Maybe we can just briefly talk about them, and then we can keep the conversation going throughout the webinar. So we have one question, what about data sliming? Are you able to comment on that, Toktam?
Can I ask what you exactly mean about that in terms of the person asked that question? Can you explain a little bit?
Yeah, would you be fine to speak a bit more to that, Unico?
Yes.
Yeah, great, thank you.
My question, what was your question, please?
Can you explain a little bit more about your question?
I have several questions, in fact. First,
Okay.
Today we don't have garbage consuming data. Then we have a lot of data, unuseful and outdated. What do you think about this? How we can manage better the data?
Okay. In that matter, that's the reason my main point in this presentation and on this research I am doing on this topic is we need to supervise AI agents, and we need to use that in the benefit of that specific matter we are working on that. So for example, for this example, using this tool is not letting like a designers or design students to use ChatGPT or other AI agent as it is. we design a tool using ChatGPT, supervising them. So all the experts review the data we input to that tools and then filter the data, make sure that all the information are up to date, and then let them use. But we can't provide that tool easily with a affordable a cost or expertise without using AI. So that was my point, that we always need to supervise these agents, and we can't use them as it is, because I agree with you. There are lots of faults and flaws in the data gathering, and and lots of manipulation, actually hallucinations in AI agents. So we are aware of those things, and we need to use that in a smart way. The way when we start using, when we started using internet itself, it was lots of argument around that. And I know this is in another level, but at that time, everyone was at the start against of that. And we were all doubtful about that, if we can increase our performance. But these days, we can't do anything without internet.
And in the case of architecture, you need the specific data, not all world data.
Exactly. And we need to filter that to make different tools for different use as well.
And maybe instead of having the flow of data, use the previous developed knowledge models as ontology applies to buildings and so on. And my second purpose is about AC, because today everybody uses AC. It's nothing to do with generative AI, but it's related to buildings. And we have the windows completely closed. You can have, you don't have the possibility to open the window, and you have AC if you need or if you don't need.
Yeah, that's are the things that by using my point for this presentation, but by using this agent in the way that can help sustainability, we can a little bit offset the impact it has itself on the environment in different fields. So in health, in sustainability, architecture. So that's the main point of this short discussion.
I would love to invite you as invited speaker to my workshop on AI for sustainability. I will drop your email on this.
Sure. Thank you so much. It would be my honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I love the networking's happening already. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much again, Toktam. And sorry, I also, when I think I read out the question wrong, it should be data slimming that the discussion was based around. So thank you again. And again, we'll keep up this discussion. But yes, we just have to move on to our next speaker. So thank you again, Toktam. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Benjamin Kelley, who will be presenting on Green by Design, Engineering an Energy Smart AI Future for Education. Benjamin Kelley is an accomplished academic and educator specializing in engineering education, curriculum design, and STEM pedagogy. And he's currently completing a PhD in engineering education at Western Sydney University. So thank you very much, Ben, and please start when you're ready.
Okay, thanks, Olivia. I would also like to extend my acknowledgement to the traditional owners of the land. Green by design. So what I'll be looking at in particular is looking at what AI and some of the challenges we'll have, particularly with the expected growth, particularly centered around its uptake in education. So AI this is no secret to anyone here, certainly been having a growing presence in Australian education at all levels, not just at the tertiary level. I was recently at a conference where it was being discussed about teaching students in grade 3 and 4 at primary school to use AI. And that I found was, that blew my mind, because everything that we've been talking about at the tertiary sector and at secondary sector, It's happening also at the primary sector, and the expectations there are that it will be significant in all those sectors. There's already 260 data centers in Australia. They already consume a considerable amount of electricity already. And with the growth in AI, the expected demand is going to be over 175 new data centers to be built in Australia. Amazon alone has pledged $20 billion for data centers in just Sydney and Melbourne in a recent announcement. The New South Wales government has also announced that it's going to be fast-tracking data center approval because they also recognise that there's an explosive growth in AI, and in facilitating that, the local use of AI and the local data centers required to power it. So we're already looking at a more than doubling increase in the total data center capacity in Australia by 2030. So we're talking making up a significant portion of the overall power grid in AI data centers. So currently the data centers are spread all around the country. This is just a map of all the data centers we have, primarily focused in Melbourne and Sydney, but the capital cities have them, and there's a few scattered regionally around. But that gives you a current idea of the current situation regarding data centers. So AI's efficiency and growth. Certainly when AI was originally rolled out, its priority was not efficiency. It was not, we're looking at the capability. And certainly it's been dazzling in that front there. So, and we've seen the quick adoption of large language models and image generation as tools in all workplaces and educational environments. And in some areas, it's becoming a necessary skill. For example, in programming and coding areas, usage could be as high as almost 100% in those areas. In schools and universities, certainly there's statistics indicating at least 50% to 70% of students are already using AI, and about 20% are using it daily, and that is expected to increase. People are using it for a variety of reasons. We currently at the university and at schools tend to look at it in terms of assessment, but they're using it for everything, replacing normal Google type queries with AI-based queries at all levels. So it's not just the number of people that are using, it's the intensity of the people that are using it. And as mentioned, it's going all the way from primary school age children right up to those in the workforce, retirees, all the way through. It's wading through all the demographics. And the Australian government has a framework for generative AI in school, and so does New South Wales as well. And New South Wales is facilitating that. That's what that image there on that slide is showing, that the key areas of concern about that framework, about accountability, privacy and security, teaching and learning, human and social well-being, transparency and fairness. There is a big equity issue around AI as well. So as this is rapidly rolled out, the governments want to make sure that it's equitably available and supported as much as possible, particularly in places like schools where it is sort of a competitive environment. And the equity issues raise big challenges for schools, because that undermines a lot of the learning that can happen through that. So AI is maturing. When it first rolled out, it's looking at the capabilities, it's looking at what it can do. And over the last, and it's been very rapid years, we've seen that it's started to evolve into a commercial business model and finding efficiency. So the first generations of AI were run on basically GPUs and server farms that were not optimized for AI usage, that they were adapted from their existing usage as high-performance computing centers. And we're now seeing specifically in the hardware, specific codes and instructions to optimize for AI usage, which has seen a tremendous increase in efficiency and performance. So things like FP4, so we've seen the precision in floating point calculations in AI optimized systems decrease. So traditionally floating point mathematics, if you're using in engineering, would be say 64 bits or even more. In AI, the precision really isn't as important as it is in, say, engineering or high-performance computing normally, and it's now adopted these much smaller, more efficient mathematical methods, which have reduced memory requirements, but also increased processing capabilities. It's not so much more that they're using less power, but they're able to do more with the power that they have in their envelope. AI is commercial now. You pay for your subscription to ChatGPT. You pay for your subscription model to any number of providers. It's already being integrated into commercial software. So when we're talking at AI, it's not just a website. It's not just ChatGPT. It's now being embedded in Adobe products. It's across the board. If you're trying to look at where AI is being used, that line is becoming blurred in every way. And Microsoft seems to be moving towards integrating into all of their products. And OpenAI has been using their API to also open their AI solutions to other products as much as possible. So AI is basically going to be everywhere, from predictive text to language translation. The usage is going to be very high. It's not going to just be single requests coming from a website and helping people with assignments. School leavers and graduates are now AI aware and fast adopters. So they're certainly using it at secondary school. They're certainly using it at university. They're already going into the workplace and using it. 97% of developers are using AI. We know that it's heavily used in those areas. Energy efficiency has also significantly improved. So we've seen a tenfold increase in improvement in energy efficiency just in one area. Again, that reflects probably the initial rollout to it, where the efficiency wasn't the priority. If you're developing something, you're just wanting to get it to work. Now that it's a big business that has millions of customers, that improvement is rolling out very fast, and they have been able to gain an efficiency. This is also meeting up with another issue coming up with Moore's Law and the issues regarding continual optical shrinkage of node for semiconductor performance increases. What we're seeing now is that the hardware really can't be made that much faster, not as like it used to, and we're seeing it to increasingly small gains in those areas. And that also means that we're sort of seeing a maturing of the process there. AI has ran the development gauntlet of semiconductors very quickly, and we're now seeing it almost at the end of that, in the same conjunction as regular semiconductor fabrication. So there won't be a whole lot of efficiency improvement in terms of semiconductors, although previously it had products had very short life cycles. We're likely to see those increase now as the hardware investments, and it's functionally based within those models where we've actually seen memory usage come down or work within the existing limits of hardware, not having to exponentially increase in every generation. But this also requires innovations in power and cooling, and both of those are very significant. So the government solution to some of this is to tie renewable energy and data centers together. So placing the data centers either at power hubs or in the regional renewable energy areas. A classic example of that is the Quinbrook Supernode in Queensland, which is tying both a data center and the power grid together at a place where there is a significant power delivery from those renewable energy centers, but it is close to a city as well. And it's located with a 750 megawatt battery, and the benefits of this is redundancy and also efficiency. So you are using the power where you are generating the power or where the power is freely available, and having it linked with a battery also basically provides an extra large uninterruptible power supply for these data centers, which is also significant cost. And often these were traditionally backed up by diesel generators and other things like that, fossil fuel-based systems as well. So the data center zones and renewable energy zones are scattered around the state. This was the original government plan for data centers. It makes sense. You think, power lines are expensive to build. Fiber optic cables are very cheap to install. The data centers could be located with these on these renewable energy areas. However, the businesses have found that they don't want to build these data centers out there for a variety of reasons. Costs are higher out in the regional areas, and also manning and expertise out there will also be challenges. So until those things can change, that's going to be a barrier to having those roll out to the regional areas. The other thing that's driving local hosting is data sovereignty and privacy. And student information and student information is personal information from clients as well. is a high priority these days, and they should always be a high priority, but particularly when dealing with children. And as part of that, it's the requirements are now dealing around local legislation within Australia to manage that. Australia seems to have a little less faith in some of the international systems in terms of doing that, perhaps in other countries. Ultimately, we don't control the data that is hosted in other countries. It's controlled by other nations. That's part of the process. So there is a huge pressure for to encourage local hosting so that our laws and requirements can apply. And that means that these data centers have to be built locally. And that means a lot of data centers very quickly. So there's a voluntary ethics standard and a best practice, but certainly the government itself and the government services that it's providing needs local hosting, and also major people that contract with the government. The government can force those standards onto those contracts as well. The New South Wales Education Department already has its own flavour of AI called EduChat, and there's a variety of reasons why it's doing that. Certainly, ChatGPT and Gemini and other AI commercial entities are widely used in schools. However, they are blocked within the DET system for students. They are accessible to teachers. Teachers are being encouraged to use them. But EduChat is where they want to focus it in providing something that maybe is usable in schools. Now, the private system doesn't have that requirement, and there are private schools getting students directly interacting with Copilot, Gemini, ChatGPT, and they're using that to enabling the learning process. And the education system is competitive. Ultimately, everyone wants an ATAR, and schools are often ranked and valued by their ATAR. And a school that seems to be using AI as an advantage for its students in the learning process, not in the assessment process, but in the learning process, would, theoretically, the potential is huge here, in that you can have a tutor that is always there for the student, able to answer them at any time. So EduChat is perhaps what the government solution for that is. So we also now have a government entry into AI, and that is rolling out to schools now. It's accessible to everyone within the department, and we may see universities start adopting that as well, particularly to go deal with the issues of data sovereignty and privacy. Ultimately, people that are using these tools are learning these people's jobs and what they're doing. So ultimately, this data could be extremely important. And there's maybe an interest there from a social aspect, is where all this control should be. Should it be in the hands of private entities, or should the government be working in this space more directly, particularly when it comes to children? So yeah, playing into the geopolitical part, there's a lot of instability wider things. The security and sovereignty concerns are now becoming a much bigger issue. Australia could be a strategic hub for AI. There are much smaller nations around us, and we talk about the specific nations, developing nations around us, people that are already struggling. They won't be able to build this infrastructure at the rate we can, and we have strong cultural and ethical links to these countries. So they will be looking to us to provide a solution, and training and employing in AI to meet those solutions as well. So OpenAI announced just recently they have an economic blueprint for Australia, which is always a bit disturbing when a large billion-dollar entity specifically mentions Australia, releases a white paper. They're obviously keen to lobby the government on a number of issues. They need the data centres. They're quite happy to host the data in Australia and look at that. But they also are lobbying about a number of issues. But clearly one of the major factors was this energy aspect of it. And that's a concern for Australia, because we are trying to shift our power grid already from fossil fuel-based to renewable energy. And this is adding a huge, significant, unexpected load at the same time. Yeah, the demands of that will have to be accounted. We're talking maybe 5 to 10% of the grid by 2030. So in conclusion, AI is about equality and power and costs. Those cheaper aspects will mean that FP4, that the quality is reduced, but the potential is there to power it by AI. Cool, thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Ben. Yeah, so fascinating. And yeah, you've covered so many great points across, both education and sustainability. I'm just looking at the chat, Sharon had a great question. So are we, as in WSU, involved with a data center near the new Western Sydney airport?
Just a sec. At the moment, I'm not sure we are directly involved in any of those things at the moment. I'm sure someone else may be more knowledgeable than that. But at the moment, these things are still occurring and still working out. I think there's some of these things are still very formative. So again, the New South Wales government is looking at fast tracking approval. So some of these things are still being worked out in terms of details. And some of these may also be covered under commercial confidentiality agreements until it happens. So I can't add anything more to that, sorry.
Still good. Yeah, I'm just looking at the chat as well. So yeah, I had a few comments. Your presentation was great, and I thought you made a great point about the AI tools being basically like ubiquitous, and in that sense, there might be regulation difficulties as well. I was also just interested, I'm not sure if I just didn't pick it up, when you're talking about the EDU chat that public schools have, is this still for staff, or do students have access to this as well?
At the moment, it's being trialled for students and staff, but the trial for students is only happening in some schools. The expectation is that it will be available everywhere. It's clear that students already have access to AI through their phones anyway, in and out of school and at their home computer anyway. So yeah, that you can't block AI from schools, even primary schools. The access is already there. But yeah, EduChat is still in a developing process at the moment. It's progressing quite quickly, but yeah, it's still in that trial phase. So that only started last year.
Oh, that's really interesting. And like, if I understand correctly as well, is there a kind of divide with public and private schools in terms of attitudes towards generative AI tools?
There is. I was at a recent conference and it was very interesting to see a whole bunch of different people from different schools, different schooling systems. It's all happened so quickly. Everyone seems to be sort of catching up. So a lot of it's still being teacher led by individuals, and those that wish to experiment are experimenting in the void of lacking of any policy or exclusion or anything like that. But yeah, there is obviously the private schools have a certain expectation, and some schools have run with that straight away in terms of things, and that's made everyone else a little bit more interested in what's happening. But there is an equity issue here. In some sense, AI can resolve some equity issues. In some sense, some people from wealthier backgrounds have always had an advantage in terms of accessing information, and even in terms of doing assignments. People have always been able to be paid to do other people's assignments. AI kind of levels a lot of that stuff out a little bit, in potentially. So there is a thing there where maybe the divide isn't so much, and most of the big tools are accessible to anyone. But yeah, the private schools, they're already talking about giving everyone subscriptions to ChatGPT and stuff like that. So that is raising the issues. At this stage, it's still very formative and it's still moving at itself. And a lot of the stuff the students are doing, they're doing it by itself. So the schools aren't guiding them in that way. The students are aware of this, and quite clever students are attracted to it, and students that are struggling at school are also attracted to it. It tends to be that mid-range where there's perhaps people are more worried about what that means, but it is somewhere where each schooling system has a different policy and a different set of procedures. So, and those are developing at the moment as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben. So yes, because of time, we might have to move on, but yeah, thank you again. And yeah, we could keep up the discussion with the Zoom chat and the Padlet. So thank you, Ben. So yeah, now it's my pleasure to introduce Arthur Gambo, who's presenting on the use of artificial intelligence in automation learning. So Arthur Gambo is a PhD student in automation at the Université de Rennes Champagne-Ardenne in France. And he's currently visiting the Center of AI at Western Sydney University with Professor Bernard Riera and Professor Unica Mercier-Laurent. as part of a successful Franco-Australian grant scheme for a project titled Bridging AI Sustainably Across Industry 5.0 and Society 5.0. And it was great that Arthur had commented that he'll begin his PhD work following his visit to Western Sydney University, where we're recognized as experts in the field. So thank you very much, Arthur, and yeah, welcome to Australia as well.
Thank you. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. I will speak about the use of AI and automation learning. My name is Gambo Arthur. I am a PhD student, and we come from France, from University of Florence, Champagne-Ardenne. I would like to thank a lot Professor Simeon for his welcome, his availability, and his support. Firstly, I will speak with you about my my research, because I am a PhD student that I said, and I am working with the use of digital twin for knowledge development, for learning, for automation technician and automation engineer learning. So actually, we have the convergence of IT and OT, and this convergence uh, and this convergence and this convergence involves the automation, the automation learning, and the automation and the industry 4.0. So it's an obligation for teaching to learn more and train our technician, our students, and how can we train and learn automation to our technician. Our future technician is the use of digital twin. So we use digital twin to help and to learn automation and learn industry 4.0 to our future technician and future engineer. I have three way of my research. The first way is the use of the new standards. The new standards is IEC 61499. It's a PLC. It's a PLC programming standards, and and this standard use the event programming. It's event programming, and this standard permits to have an application, a portability application, and the interoperability application. It's very very easy and simple to program with this new standard. So the first way of my research is have the innovative proof of concept for automation training with this standards, and to have this we use Factory IO. Is the PLC software training, and Factory IO permits to have a plant simulation, a factory simulation. So we used we use the new standards, and we use Factory IO to make and do the plant simulation. The objective is to permit to teach the use of EIU. AAU is the EcoStructure Automation Experts. It's the automation software, so it permits to program the PLC with the new norms. So the second objective is the obsolescence of knowledge in automation learning. Why? Because we have the evolution of all the technologies, and we have the risk of mismatch between a student skill and industry needed, and we have the importance of continuous learning and active technology work. We have another objective. It's on AI, and it's the analyzing student practice in automation with AI. So we have we want to use LLMs to identify logic programming errors and to provide personalized feedback to our student to help him and to get the students to have a efficient and a good programming practice. So how can LLM can help you? It can help us. We want to I describe here in this table the situation and how how the LLM can help us to resolve this situation. So I will take two situations. Is the student can upload um, her file, her factory IO file project, and the LLM will analyze the function block and detect the errors and help student to correct um, her error. We want to give this to make a if the students make a typical error during programmation, like instantiation error, the LLM will detect the issue, the good, and give them the good programming and the good way to program. So the sustainability in our case, for the moment, we don't integrate the sustainability aspect in our research because we don't start the tests with AI. And however, we will include the sustainability in our research. For me, I will give my point of view in sustainability on automation. For me, we have three dimensions of this sustainability. It's the social dimension, the economical dimension, and the environmental dimension. And I think the impact of digital twin on sustainability will be most directly visible on two dimensions of sustainability, like environmental and economic dimension. So the digital twin make it possible to reduce or eliminate the need of physical prototype and the components. And the digital twins permit so to minimize the needs of resource and permit to reduce both the environmental impacts and operational expense. So this work is a part of my doctoral research that the topic is the use of digital twin for knowledge construction, and the perspective of my research is for the future is analyze the work of students, develop a digital twin for education. Thank you for your attention. you have here my email, and also you can scan the QR code to send me an email.
Great. Yes, thank you so much, Alpha. Would anyone like to get us started with the Q&A? Feel free to just type in the Zoom chat or use the audio. Yeah, your research is yeah, obviously so relevant to yeah, I think issues we're all kind of grappling with. Yeah, would anyone like to start us off with a question? Okay. Frank has asked a question. I might not try to take that one out. um, I'm not sure if you can speak to that, Alpha.
I have a question.
Yeah.
By Frank Hill, of course. Okay, I saw the response by Erika. Yes. I don't know. But the question is in French. I will give the response in French, please. Oui, Franck, je pense que la France doit se conformer à la loi européenne sur l'IA parce que voilà, c'est une loi européenne, c'est une loi qui est régie entre guillemets par l'Union européenne et il faut que forcément nous nous conformions à cette loi-là. Voilà. Sorry.
That's all good. I'm not sure if you want to translate as well for some of us in the audience. For anyone? Great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think in the chat as well, I just had made a comment. It was interesting how you're talking about a mismatch between student skills and industry needs. And I like that idea of an active technology watch. Yeah, yes, thanks. Yes, does France have to comply with the European law on AI? Okay. Great. Thank you. Anyway, I'm just sorry looking at time, so we might just have to move on, but please, keep the discussion going on our Zoom chat or Padlet in whatever language you prefer as well. Yes, now, oh, sorry, I just see that Don's asked a question for thoughts on how much industry is spearheading the adaptation of Gen AI. Is there any specific industry leaders in this area we may look? I'm not sure if you have any comments on that, Arthur? Yep.
Yeah. I don't understand. Did you speak with me?
Yeah. Yeah, or I think Don is kind of asking to the group, like all of us as well, if anyone would maybe like to suggest industry leaders that we can look at as well.
Yes, yes. So here is Bernard speaking. Yes, we
Yeah, thank you.
have a company in France called Mistral. And so in fact, they try to design and to develop LLM, specific French or European LLM. And so do not hesitate to look at Mistral. I'm going to write it, the name. And the LLM is, in French, it's Le Chat.
Oh,
Mistral AI.
Yeah.
Not only Mistral.
Mistral AI, yes.
yeah. Great. Yeah, thank you, Bernard. And maybe you can add some of those sources to our Padlet as well for us to look at later. So thank you. Great. So thank you again, Arthur. And yeah, I'm just looking at the time, so we might just have a 5-minute break, seeing we've got quite a long session. So, just some time to maybe grab a cup of coffee, and then we'll come back in 5 minutes time. So, yes, we'll have a break. So thank you. Hey, Zach, are you there?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so just let me know when you're ready and we can start again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really ready, really whenever everyone else is. Dr.
Perfect.
Ellis, I loved the way you said those things. I've never heard anyone say that. I really, really appreciated that.
Haven't you heard before?
No, I haven't heard like the ethical and responsible is bad. I totally agree with you.
I'm not saying it's bad. I just think it's unhelpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like not progressive in any way, shape, or form. And then you like combat that. Like most people say that that's true, but then they say like don't use it at all. Then you combated it in a very like progressive, helpful way, which is cool. I don't know. I sent it to everyone at my company because we preach a lot of the same things you do, and we just say it the wrong way, which is funny that I realized. But yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Zach. And yes, welcome back, everyone. So yeah, now it's my pleasure to introduce Zach Kinzler, who will be talking on Introduction to Boodlebox, Reducing AI-Related Environmental Impact. And Zach is the head of academic sales strategies at Boodlebox.ai, where he helps colleges and universities implement cutting-edge AI tools to empower students and educators. He also hosts a podcast as well, the Smarter Campus podcast, which I think you can check out on LinkedIn, right, Zach? And maybe some of...
I can share all that stuff in the chat too. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great. Well, yeah, thank you, Zach. Yeah, please begin when you're ready.
Okay. Well, I will jump in right now. So before I kind of jump into the environmental stuff, I'm just going to give a quick walkthrough of why we do what we do here at Boodlebox. And I really wanted to say I appreciate everyone's perspective in this conversation, really just from the beginning about environmental impact. And it's a very important thing that I believe not enough people are really talking about. And it's one of the main reasons that I joined this company here. So I live out in Bozeman, Montana in the United States. I'm a big environmental advocate. There's been data centers moving into where I'm from, and it's very damaging to the land. And I'm just excited to see that this is a worldwide conversation, which is really, really cool. So this is Boodlebox. Pretty much, we believe that humans and AI work best together. It's built as a collaborative AI tool, meaning multiple human beings and multiple artificial intelligence softwares can all interact in one cohesive environment. That cohesive environment is environmentally conscious. I would say it's much better for the environment than normal LLM usage. It's incredibly equitable, as in the cost is incredibly low. And we do this through a really cool technology that I'll kind of walk everyone through today. But before I get in that, our main mission is to empower lifelong learning about and work with AI. It's not about just doing things with artificial intelligence. It's understanding start to finish, high level, what is going on, what are the implications, and AI readiness is something we really focus on. We're partnered with about 20,000 faculty and students in 900 institutions, 36 institutions that purchased Boodlebox, and we have a faculty and student leadership council and multiple higher ed partnerships. And so what is AI readiness? So that's something we really talk about for students, and I even say faculty. And first is that domain expertise. One thing that we really talk about here is that most people are B- at everything now, right? AI is great at doing average level of things at just about anything. So we're all B- and we need to set a new standard for an A, AI enabled, and that is knowing when and why and how to use AI responsibly. And then human excellence. That's the thing that we all need to lead forward with now, is being human is the new killer application in a world enabled by artificial intelligence. It's something we keep at the center of everything we do here. Teaching and learning with AI is how you get domain expertise. Teaching and learning about AI is how you become AI enabled. We think those are two very, very different things. And collaborating in human and AI teams. And the thing that we really talk about here is process over product. All of this aligns with the process of how we get to the end. And what tools are required to accomplish that? It's domain expertise, which is faculty AI tools, meaning you can integrate things that already exist, right? You can integrate the school practice that you've had before, that you can create AI tutors and simulations. Like was mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, AI can do some pretty incredible things, and we can't hide our heads from that. And that comes from custom bots. And then AI enabled, giving multi-model access to all of the large language models that are really out there, being able to work with bot builders, build your own custom bots, bot orchestration, and chat sharing, meaning multiple human beings and multiple large language models in one place. And then human excellence, we allow for group chats with multi-bot chats where everyone can kind of work in the same environment. So we believe that the tools necessary are equitable, safe, secure, private, and environmentally friendly. So Boodlebox we believe is the solution. So you get premium AI access to unlimited access to all of the top of the line models, which I'll show you after this short presentation. It was cool to see Mistral because we just added Mistral in a few weeks ago. Collaboration, so you can work with multiple bots, meaning you can stack the large language models on top of each other. So I can get Mistral Large to talk with ChatGPT 4.0 or ChatGPT 03 to communicate with Claude 4.0. It's customizable, meaning you can build and share it in teams, and that it's private and secure. So as of 2 weeks ago, we are GDPR compliant, which is the Europe data regulations, and security is the number one thing we focus on here. So we don't allow any models to train any of their models on any of our data. We anonymize all prompts. So even if those contracts were to be broken with those large language models, those prompts will never coming from a human itself. So the IP is completely secure. And then all knowledge is encrypted end to end. And we really want to be the safe place for humans to interact with AI in education. Sustainable and accessible. So when this presentation was made, I was just about to update it. We had 80% lower costs for token optimization. We actually ran a case study and we reduced token usage by about 95% on average for the large language model usage. So that's how it's much better for the environment. Inherently, because we're so safe, because we don't allow those models to train, it allows us to inherently use LLMs more efficiently than they can use themselves. And I have a little slide to kind of show you. So on the left is Boodlebox, and on the right is the API Direct. And I'll let everyone look at this, and I'm going to just kind of talk about what we do here. So Boodlebox is really revolutionizing the environmental impact of AI through our groundbreaking token reduction technology that you can see here. So by reducing tokens by up to 95% and enabling about 20 times more tokens within the same context window, we've created a fundamentally different approach to AI utilization compared to traditional methods. And our approach isn't just really environmentally and cost effective. It's incredibly environmentally responsible. So Boodlebox has enabled 5,000 conversations that would have otherwise exceeded context windows and been impossible without the reduction technology. And by maintaining all these necessary contexts while eliminating the noise, we're really proving that AI can be both powerful and sustainable. And unlike the big companies that process every token at full computational cost, Boodlebox has really reimagined how LLMs are used and utilized effectively, and demonstrating that this technology does not have to come at the expense of our planet and at the usage of the cost. And this is just a quick case study for everyone to kind of look over. So Boodlebox, these are the tokens that we used on the left, and this is what the API Direct would have been on the right, and I can share more information on this afterwards. But super quickly, once everyone, just let everyone look over that super quick. And then I'll kind of just give a super fast walkthrough of Boodlebox, and then I can leave a few minutes for questions. And I know we're tight on time, so I want to be quick. But I'm going to exit out of this real quick, and I can share all this information with anyone afterwards if they're interested. And this is Boodlebox. So it kind of just looks like a normal AI chat, right? So, but what you can do is you can come in, and I'll show you all the AI models we have available. So you have unlimited access, no token limits to all of these large language models: ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, InflectionPy. Everyone here seems to be very interested in ethical AI companies. Inflection, I would say, is the #1 in the world right now. I would check them out if you haven't. Amazon, Mistral. We do work with a school in France, Kedge Business School, and web research. And then image generation. And image generators are really, 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 really bad for the environment. And this is one of the things that we process better than anything else. So you can make about 40 images on Boodlebox for every image that can be made outside of it. I like to say, please don't do that, but that's just the example kind of the level of environmental impact we have. There's Boodlebots. These are just custom GBTs that we've created. You can create your own custom bots. And The big thing I also want to focus on is that collaboration feature. So we allow for multiple human beings to interact with multiple large language models in one environment. So this is an example of multiple students having a conversation, and then they call ChatGPT into the conversation, and ChatGPT completely understands the context of what's going on. They continue, and they call Claude in. So we really want to keep that human at the center of the human AI interaction. And then there's one other thing that I want to show, and then I'm going to leave time for questions. But Boodlebox allows for like lots of multicultural collaboration. I work with students from all over the world, and I work with a bunch of students in Africa. And this is an example of me working with my friend named Sikle. He lives in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm working in English, and Sile is working completely in isiZulu. So you can seamlessly work with people that don't speak the same language as you across the world. As I mentioned, it's GDPR compliant. We don't have any models. We don't train any models on all of our data. You can build custom bots as you could if a custom GBT, and these custom bots can be powered by any model that you want on the back end. I don't want to go too in depth, and I know we're short on time and I could get through this quickly. So if anyone has any questions, I'd send all my information in the chat. Really excited to be here, and thank you so much for listening.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Zach. Yeah. That was great how, yeah, you've managed to present and give us a demo all in that short amount of time. So, yeah, thank you for that. And oh, yes, Professor Cath has commented we could have done with that for our, yeah, multilingual chat. Yes, we'll be better prepared for the next webinar. Great. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask Zach? I think Sharon asked, is the case study publicly available?
So it's not necessarily publicly available, so we don't like to publish it, rather just show it because it kind of is, you can't patent things, right, in this world with AI, and it's kind of proprietary information on how it exactly works, but I'd love, and I honestly don't have the decision making to tell you whether it's publicly available or not. So I can go ask, and if it is, I will send it to you. But I was told that I was allowed to present it here today. So
yeah, great.
if anyone wants to try Boodlebox, I completely forgot to mention, I would love to share a free code. I'll send it in the chat. You do have to put a credit card in. It's not because we want to steal $16 from you. It's because it's a security issue. So let me know. I'll send my email. When you put your credit card in, I will personally go in on the back end and make sure none of the cards are charged at the end of the trial period. I'll send my Gmail, LinkedIn. I have a podcast. I work with a bunch of people in Australia right now, which is cool at NSW, and was lucky enough to meet Olivia on LinkedIn. So if anyone has any question, just wants to chat AI, I'll be here on the other side.
Yeah, great. Yeah, LinkedIn is, yeah, definitely a great platform for networking. Yeah, thank you, Zach. And yeah, I just saw Ben asked, do WCU students have any discount for purchasing AI tools? Yeah, Linda Flemley's answered that quite well. So Microsoft Copilot is our kind of only endorsed generative AI tool at the moment, and Adobe tools as well as Adobe Creative Campus. Great. So yeah, thank you so much, Zach. And yeah, again, we can keep the discussion going via our Zoom chat and Padlet. But yes, just kind of looking at time, I think we should move on to our next speaker. So thanks again, Zach. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Ayesha Aafreen, who's presenting on generative AI in sustainability, how emerging intelligence is powering a greener future. So Ayesha is currently pursuing her Masters of Research degree at Western Sydney University, and she's exploring the intersection of ESG and finance. And her academic work is informed by over 14 years of professional experience with global technology leaders like MetricStream, Oracle, and Autodesk. Yes, thank you so much, Ayesha, and yeah, please just start when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Olivia, and good morning, everyone. My name is Ayesha, and as Olivia introduced, I'm doing my Masters of Research currently with Western Sydney University, and my thesis is exploring how the ESG performance of banks is affecting non-performing loans, bank costs, basically bank performance and bank stability. And yes, I have worked with Metrixin, which is one of the global leaders of providing GRC solutions, governance, risk and compliance solutions, of which ESG is also a very big component. And that's where my interest in sustainability began. So quickly, my presentation is going to be a little slightly different take on how AI is affecting sustainability in the real world. Gen AI, generative AI, it's basically AI that creates new stuff. Algorithms that can create content like text, images, codes, simulations, and even chemical compounds. Unlike the traditional AI, which classifies or predicts, generative AI actually produces new outputs based on the patterns that it has learned. And you would ask me, what does it have to do with sustainability? A lot, in fact. As AI has the potential to generate it has the potential to generate and regenerate, it can help with creating cleaner designs, deeper analysis, and even smarter strategies. And a few important ways through which Gen AI plays a very crucial role in sustainability is by analyzing environmental data, increasing development of sustainable technology, aiding in the process of decision making, and enhancing communication and education on sustainability. Data analysis is the core of sustainability. Everything revolves around data and what it tells us. And often this data is messy, huge, unstructured, and fragmented. It is scattered across reports, PDFs, dashboards, written in unstructured text, and different formats. And many times, because of these shortcomings, critical patterns and anomalies are missed by human evaluation. This is where generative AI steps in, and it can read, extract, and summarize this data and help us analyze and create actionable insights from, these very dense corporate ESG disclosures, technically rich environmental impact reports and research papers. It can help us detect anomalies in data and also identify policy gaps and contradictory regulations. It can merge different data coming in from satellite imagery, textual reports, IoT sensors, merge data coming from different sources and give you a holistic picture of the problem that you're trying to solve. See, it doesn't just analyze things, it also visualizes. It generates graphs, infographics, dashboards, which makes data more easily assimilable. And if you look at it, traditional analysis takes weeks to analyze data and give you outputs and everything, but Gen AI can do that live and provide real-time summaries. See, basically in sustainability, data isn't scarce, it is the insights. And Gen AI is helping us right now transform complex, fragmented information into clear and timely guidance that can support greener decisions. Gen AI can also help us simulate design and design new materials, buildings, and technology that is more energy efficient, it is more sustainable, and it can do it way more faster and way more cheaper than the traditional R&D. It can suggest entirely new designs and materials that use fewer resources, have a lower carbon footprint, are biodegradable and recyclable. For example, your bio-based plastics. And it can also help you simulate placements of, solar panels and wind turbines to get maximum efficiency. It can help us create blueprints of buildings that are maximizing natural light and ventilation and using optimized insulation materials, which is again helping us reduce the heating and cooling energy that is being used. Traditional green innovation is slow and expensive, but Gen AI is changing all of this by imagining and building sustainable solutions faster, cheaper, and way more creatively. Now, what do you do with all this data? You need to make decisions. And the people who actually make decisions are not technical experts, are not experts in the region. So decision making can be enhanced only when clear and actionable insights are available to these people. With Gen AI, we can simulate environmental outcomes of various policy and investment decisions and evaluate these policies before they are even implemented. It can help us generate planning options that are optimized for green space distribution, energy efficient, and infrastructure in place. Having early warning systems and contingency plans based on real-time data can help us really with the environmental risk management. These days, decarbonization is a goal that is taking prime importance for organizations, basically to reduce their carbon footprint. And AI can help by producing customized plans which are departmentalized to reduce the emissions based on past behavior and predictive modeling. Greener decisions have to be taken right at the product design stage. It cannot wait for the product to come up. When you're designing products, that is where you need help, which can help you probably, optimize plastic usage without, compromising durability. And localizing climate action is very much needed because having a global plan is not going to help. You need to have local climate action, which is integrating the socioeconomic vulnerabilities, the local climate risks, and cultural practices. And all this is going to lead into smarter decision making. See, sustainability issues have to be explained. They have to be taught and they need to be more personalized and wider because these reports, findings, technical studies are very dense. So this is where Gen AI is coming into picture and helping us translate all of these into plain language summaries, FAQs and short articles. And again, as we saw, the way Boodlebox is going to, help with the language barrier, this is where AI is going to come into picture. These tools can also visualize and present information which is easily understandable by even small children. And we need to start our sustainability education right from the beginning. And for that, we need to have a customized lesson plan and teaching material which is adapted to local context, age groups, and knowledge levels. Basically, we need to make ESG and sustainability more understandable. Climate change is as much a communication problem as much as it is a scientific one. And Gen AI can really help us bridge this gap between complex data and human understanding and turning awareness into informed decisions. The real world impact, there are like a lot of AI models that are helping us in the sustainability world, like, Google DeepMind is helping us optimize cooling in data centers and cutting down energy usage by 40%. Whereas Grey Parrot, another AI model, is automatically recognizing and sorting wastes in recycling facilities. Similar way, SI-GPT, it is an AI-driven platform which organizes ESG metrics from complex reports. Climate GPT helps you answer questions about climate change using curated and science-based sources. Okafu is helping farmers diagnose crop diseases and pests just by uploading an image of the entire disease that they are looking at. And Pachama is also helping monitoring forests and carbon sequestration, ensuring the integrity of carbon offset projects. So these are the real world AI applications, there are many more. These are the few that I have picked up for our discussion today. Yes, all good said about AI, it does come with its own challenges. The environmental challenges, which have already been spoken about, the high energy consumption, the amount of water that is needed, and the e-waste and the resource extraction issues, all these do come into picture. Along with this, yes, we have the ethical challenges of data. Who has access to it? How is it used? What are the risks of the data being misused? And again, yes, the bias in data is going to affect the entire result that you get. AI is learning from the data that they are fed. And if this data is biased, yes, your outcomes might be unfair. And again, exploitation does come into picture. Along with this, we have the governmental and policy challenges. The complexity of regulatory compliances does stop you from using AI to its full extent. Flawed AI-driven reporting due to the bias in the training data set can lead to greenwashing risks. And yes, as we discussed, we have technical and operational challenges. Scaling AI models requires significant resources, including computational power and additional memory, which is going to again lead you back to the environmental challenges. There are a few solutions which, yes, people before me have also spoken. We need to standardize and improve data collection. We need to have more robust governance frameworks. We need governments across the world coming together and trying to form one set of frameworks for everyone. We need to apply strong data governance practices. And yes, the diverse data sets that are being used, we need to have an audit. We need to conduct bias audits on the data sets on which we are training our AI models. We need to optimize our algorithms for energy efficiency as well. Recycling and reusing hardware effectively. And these are just a few of the solutions that we have for the challenges. finally, a call to the action. Yes, Gen AI can amplify sustainable action, but only if it is used responsibly. And where the ethics and the energy used have to be the core of the innovation and not just some afterthoughts which we think about later. We need to push for AI that doesn't just generate ideas, but generates equity, justice, and hope. And with that, I stop. Any questions?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ayesha. Yes, there's a lot of interest in your talk. So I might just start with Roger's question, which is how can AI help address climate adaptation and mitigation, where we are facing significant uncertainty as to transitions required, and prior behavior is not a good predictor of behavioral changes required?
So yes, prior behavior is not how you will learn, but that is a starting point. So again, AI is not going to do everything on its own. You need to have the human intervention over there. So you need to learn from your past mistakes. And if you have that data already in place, you're not going to make those mistakes again, right? So that's the entire way that you'll have to learn. Yes, the data that we have is biased. The data that we have is full of mistakes. So we need to learn from those mistakes and take better actions.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, just kind of going through some of the questions as well. Unica's asked, what about circular energy?
Circular energy, it's not something that I have really gotten into at this point of time. But then, yes, I can get back to you because right now I am also working as a consultant for a global ESG sustainability consulting company, and they do a lot of work on circular economy as well. So I can take that question back to them and see if I can answer it for you.
Thank you very much, because in some Scandinavian countries, they already use this. For example, in Finland, in Sweden, they heat the houses, schools, and hotel from energy from data centers. Maybe it's something to consider.
Yeah, definitely. We should consider that in Sydney, especially during the winter that is going on right now.
Right, and
Thank you.
so Toktam was clapping to that point as well. So, great. Maybe just one more question, and then again, we'll pick up the discussion at the end as well. So Anthony's asked if it's possible that as AI use overtakes, replaces industry's processes that are heavily reliant on fossil fuels to operate, it might in fact have a net positive impact on the environment.
Um, Definitely. So as we were talking about fossil fuels and their usage in, say, for electric vehicles, like vehicles and everything, even with the electric vehicles, we can have a much better design, which is much more energy efficient, which is going to go ahead and reduce our consumption or our dependence on fossil fuels. So we'll have to go ahead and look at things and redesign things, basically, to be more sustainable, to have a better impact on the environment.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
thank you
hope that
so much.
answers.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, again, we can continue these chats as well in the Zoom and Padlet. Thank you. Sorry, I saw there were a few more questions, but we might just wait to the end of the webinar to kind of address those. So yeah, thank you, Ayesha. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our last speaker for today's webinar, Kunal Rehani, who's presenting on From Prompts to Planet Saving, the Power of Generative AI in Climate Innovation. So Kunal is a HDR, higher degree by researcher, whose field of work focuses on data science and advanced statistics, with expertise in longitudinal data analysis, digital health interventions, and modeling human behavior. And he has over 15 years of experience in academia, human resource development, and industry. So yes, thank you very much, Kunal. Please just start when you're ready.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Olivia, and very good morning to everybody. There have been a lot of great ideas and conversations since morning, and me being the last presenter, it's definitely going to be a bit challenging for me on some of those points. So let me start sharing my screen with you very quickly. Just a second. Yeah, here we go. I hope you can see my screen. Can you?
Yes, we can see your screen. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. All right. So the goal and the aim of my presentation is to focus on the innovation, and I'm trying to bridge the gap between how we think AI as a disruption, and rather than thinking it as a tool which can bring in positive change in our world and make life easier for the human, and also striking a balance with the climate crisis in the same time. So that's the aim of my presentation. So I have been delivering, training programs and webinars almost for last 15 years. And usually whenever I talk about, the innovation and change, I do bring in this next slide up. And I'm sure you would have definitely seen this in many of the other presentations for sure. So a couple of years ago, I used to bring this for a different reason altogether. But today, I bring this on the screen once again for all of you to introspect and understand if this is something that we want to do or we don't want to do. AI is definitely a disruption, and all of us are very much aware of it. To give you a quick example, look at one of the most famous phones in the center there, Nokia, which failed to adapt to the change in the smartphone technology, did not focus on the software side of things and over hardware, right? And so right now they are no more, they are definitely there in some form of networking and data centers, but the key product that they had is no more. They lost it. Same for the Kodak film roll. All of us, some of us, I'm sure, I'm telling my age here, but some of us has definitely used these cameras, and some of the new aspiring teenagers and younger people are definitely bringing it back. However, it has become a niche now, and the company is no more, in the same line of business and generating the same kind of revenue as they used to. They lost it because of digital cameras. They did not innovate on time, so they lost it. Another example on the screen, you can see, Toys R Us. So Toys R Us has been so popular among the kids and the parents during the Christmas time. Everybody used to go to Toys R Us and pick up their lovely toys. But unfortunately, they are no more as a company. There is some niche of branding and franchisee which still might exist in sparse, in a little bit small, avenues, but they as a company do not exist. They went bankrupt, right? And why? Because they did not innovate. All right. They did not innovate to focus on online shopping, which was definitely taken the whole scenario, whole economy by storm, especially from a company like Amazon and eBay and so on at that point of time. So they lost it. So what I'm trying to say here is that we need to innovate. Climate change is definitely a problem. Looking at all the points that we have shared earlier in this presentation, in this seminar today, that the generative AI definitely require a lot of power, right? And there is definitely a problem around the ethical use of it. What is ethical, what is unethical, as humanity, we need to solve that problem. We need to find a way. We need to innovate. All right. So just to summarize this particular slide, I just want to say, in the world where things are moving exponentially, standing still is still the same as moving backward. Failing to adapt to AI doesn't mean just falling behind, but it also means missing the future, which is there, which is staring at us right in the face, how the humanity can change in coming years. So having said that, I'll just move to the next slide. So generative AI is definitely forcing some climate changes. It needs a lot of computing power and thus needs greater amount of electricity. For example, we discussed early in the presentation as well, ChatGPT uses about 1300 megawatts per hour. And there is definitely some data centers which is coming in Sydney, Australia, where we wouldn't require another 3100 megawatt additional power to power those data centers. However, all of you have smart devices at home. You have, many of you have electrical cars, all of you have a smartphone. So not only these gadgets or these tech that you have at home have some inbuilt AI already in it, which is learning from your habits. It is already optimizing how you utilize the energy and is already helping you bring down those electricity bills, whether it is power back to the grid or it is just charging your smartphone at night during off-peak hours or charging your car at off-peak hours when the rates are cheaper. The technology, the generative AI, all of that is helping us reduce those bills and thus impacting the greener gas, the carbon footprint, and so on. Extending, not only this technology helps in extending the life of the batteries, but also help in lesser pollution. So that's one of the things which all of us are using, and it's helping us reduce the carbon footprint on this planet already. Going ahead. Yeah. So is generative AI forcing climate change? It is definitely for now, but you should also know, let's look at the other perspective. Large language models assist climate researchers by synthesizing vast amount of data, finding blind spots, and suggesting new hypotheses, basically helping researchers to come up with ways which are more efficient based on the AI. Generative models are helping automate experimental designs. The cost of design thinking has substantially gone down. You can simulate lab test results on large synthetic data models right on a computer which is connected to a good GPU. Yeah. So the cost of design thinking aspect has definitely gone down, and you can experiment a lot using these generative models. Thus far, it will lead to better innovations in climate changing and reducing carbon footprint. So AI is also helping in reducing the time to discovery for carbon capture. So a lot of corporates, a lot of industries, they focus on this concept of carbon offset. So what they try to do is whatever, fossil fuels or, the not so green technology or energy that they have used, they try to offset all of that with planting trees or making other social contributions, which helps, effectively improve the overall environment and climate across the world or within a city or within a country. So AI in that way is helping climate research assistance in 21st century, reducing time to discovery, capturing the carbon offset, and green chemistry, basically coming out with newer technologies which can help with that, and also in the same time helping in geoengineering, thus helping in climate improvements. For example, another out-of-the-box approach could be, this is just for the sake of, as an example, and there is definitely a lot of research which is ongoing on this particular piece. We know that if we put the data centers in our cities and in our rural areas, there is definitely some carbon impact. There is definitely some climate and environmental impact. If we put data centers which are solar powered 24/7 in the space, we don't have such an issue. Everything is outside our environment. You have unlimited power. There is no land usage or grid dependency. There is zero emission computation. So this way, the generative design modules using AI like GAN or diffusion models can help in designing an initial simulation of these kind of technologies. This is just one example, right? Green LLM training and decentralized AI is also helping in this particular project. So in a similar way, we can adapt to other forms of fuel, even for land-based data centers. For example, we can use nuclear-powered fuels. We can go for nuclear power plants which emit virtually zero greenhouse gases during electricity generation. A small amount of nuclear fuel generate massive amount of electricity, unlike intermittent renewable solar or wind. Nuclear provides stable and continuous electricity, perfect for consistent AI workloads. And another aspect is emerging nuclear technology, which is much more greener and safer. You have smaller, pellets, which is as small as 1 square inch, even smaller than that, which can be used to generate electricity through the reactors. You have smaller reactors, smaller modules, which makes the plants more safer, sustainable, and it can be used locally alongside with the data centers. Then you have thorium reactors, which is another powerful fuel to produce radioactive electricity. So next generation of nuclear technology assisted by generative AI represents an untapped potential for powering sustainable data centers and accelerating the clean energy transition. All right, I'm moving on to the next one. So in summary, generative AI turns complexity into clarity. It can make sense of massive chaotic climate and environmental data, translating into actionable insights and designs and narratives that researchers, governments, and citizens can use across the globe. AI is also accelerating climate solutions faster than humans can. With the help of this collaborative generative AI technology, we are able to form better renewable energy and form better optimization of energy, like, for example, which we showed earlier on the previous slides. AI, generative AI shortens the life cycle from identification to simulation to development, speeding up the whole process and making it more of a net zero goal. A research multiplier, it enhances human thinking by suggesting new hypotheses, scanning global literature, generating synthetic data, and even designing experiments, all in the service of planet and well-being. For excavative to regenerative system, generative AI allows us reimagine not just for efficiency, but for regeneration from ecological friendly architecture, circular economy designs. We just discussed that a little bit earlier, rooted in the climate logic, and also democratization of climate innovation, which means a lot of people have access due to generative AI, which empowers them, which are not even experts, to basically do experiments and design thinking, including leaders, small governments or schools, and design their own climate policy, simulate future goals, and develop local greener solutions. So in my closing comments, I just want to add here is that the use of the generative AI has to be definitely done with a lot of responsibility. It is a tool, and it's our choice how we want to use it, whether we want to cut ourselves with this tool or we want to make art out of this tool. So we can definitely decide upon that as an overall humanity. And what we also need to be aware of is to put our analysis first. We know that generative AI can make mistakes. There is a lot of gaps. There is a lot of data which has been biased through the generative AI generations. So we need to be aware of that. We put our own personal analysis, be more detailed, train yourself, learn how to use the tools more effectively, and be on the top of it. Yeah. So that was my presentation. Thank you so much for your focus.
Well, yes, thank you so much, Kunal. That's really great. I'm just looking at the chat. There's been some great conversation happening. I'm just looking at Justine has made has asked an interesting question that maybe all the kind of presenters could add in or comment on, I mean. So I'm curious if you could speak to how the data is translating to policy change and decision making. We've had data on climate change for years, and the scientific community has advocated for the data and solutions. How can AI trigger action and change on a policy level? And just a little bit connected to that, Robert's also added like at a practice level as well. So again, this is the kind of question that could go out to all our presenters. Can, may, and might does not always often translate to will, must, did. How does the efficiency paradox and the role of capital accumulation and growthism factors come into this? Sorry, I know that's been that's a very big question, but if any of our presenters today wanted to quickly talk to that. But yes, I understand we're also at time. So yeah, thank you very much, Professor Cath, for joining us and for sharing all your thoughts. And yeah, just want to let everyone know as well. Again, we have the Padlet to kind of keep up the conversations. But yes, would any of our speakers today like to make kind of any final comments on those questions or any final thoughts?
Thank you so much, Olivia. You have done a lot for setting up this great webinar, and it was really insightful hearing from everyone expert in their fields. And I want to just add, based on what Professor Cath mentioned earlier, that yeah, it is a very uncertain time using this AI, and we need to think about how we get the most benefit of that, because every single question we ask from these AI agents has some impact on the environment and our planet. But at the same time, we can ask better questions, and we can ask in the way, as Kunal mentioned as well in the presentation, we need to use them in the way that help us to improve our performance in terms of saving this planet, which is the only place we can live for many years. And we need to keep this at least at the same situation, not making it worse for the next generation and next generation after that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Toktam. I think there's some great points to kind of end our webinar with, because yeah, unfortunately, I see we have run out of time. But again, please access our Padlet to kind of keep up the conversation. And yeah, I hope this webinar again can lead to kind of more networking, which I think we've kind of seen today with people exchanging different thoughts. And again, just really want to say thank you to our speakers today, Professor Cath, Dr. Toktam, Ben, Arthur, Zach, Ayesha, and Kunal. And also thank you to Melanie Chapman, who designed our poster and beautiful program for today as well. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone. And again, yeah, let's keep up the conversation and stay in touch. And yeah, hope you have a great day or night wherever you are in the world. So thank you again, everyone.